Rory, congrats. I mean, he did win it. No one gave it to him. He won it. And Scheffler finished early and thought he might be looking at some extra holes, and Rory saying no, so he got it done. Hey, let's start. We got a lot going on. We got a lot going on in the Strait of Hormuz. We got a lot going on with a blockade there, U.S.-led, that begins in an hour. Who knows what's going to happen next? I guess when all's up in the air, take on the Pope. We even have a back and forth between the pontiff and the president. We'll get back to that. We have a lot going on elsewhere. We're on YouTube this morning. If you want to view and watch live at the Pulse of an H, everything with us is at the Pulse of an H. Our poll question this morning, J-Dog, up on X at the Pulse of an H, has to do with the Pope, the pontiff, and the president. President last night criticizing Pope Leo. Pope Leo responding. I'm going to refrain my commentary right now, but do you think it's wrong for the president to criticize the Pope? Yes or no, right? I think that's the easiest way to ask it, J-Dog.
Was the president right to criticize the Pope?
That's a better way to do it. J-Dog, I don't know if we want to share results. What was I had to do with Rory from Friday?
Well, Rory McIlroy repeat winning at the Masters. We had 100% saying no. Wow. Shows what they know.
Yeah, it was good for him. He really, you know what? It was a good final 9 on the final round. It wasn't a runaway, and as you heard from our friends on the CBS side a moment ago, he was he did give up that lead, but he fought back and he won, and that's just the way it was. And good for him. It was good Masters, I thought, overall. No weather issues at all, by the way, down in Augusta, Georgia.
Oh, it was gorgeous all weekend.
No
picturesque.
rain.
It was unreal.
And speaking of weather here, J-Dog, we are getting into the warmer stuff. Finally, this week is looking much more mild. We'll take it. Thank you very much. Hey, before we get back to the Middle East, before we get back to the latest big stuff, before we get back to the price of gas, we got a packed show for you. We're going to hear from Doug Tengden, World Market Advisors on the economy. I have my own opinions, but I hope we're not talking about $4.10 a gallon for a regular gallon of gas here midsummer. That's not going to go well if you like a good economy and you want some parity in the midterms. I'll come back to that. But what's going on in Berlin, New Hampshire? I was not aware of a lot, but I did read a story, and apparently an individual, I guess you could say, shot up some businesses in the town, allegedly, released on personal recognizance. I thought we've learned a thing or two up in Berlin after that estranged husband was basically let out and free to kill his ex-wife at the restaurant. Now, that was a big statewide story, and one of the people who was critical then and critical now is Executive Counselor Joe Kenny, raising this flag to our attention. So tell us all about this, Counselor. Thanks for joining us. Good morning, New Hampshire, the Pulse of an H.
Good morning, Jack. Obviously, another shooting concerns that has got a lot of the residents in Berlin and beyond in an uproar. We had a gentleman, Richard Devoid, allegedly shot up some stores at the end of March. Eventually there was enough evidence brought forth. They had a probable cause hearing April 3rd, and then just recently he was brought forth for a bail hearing. He had approximately 10 charges, and so at the bail hearing, the judge let him go on personal recognizance, which basically said that he had to check in with the PD twice a week and receive therapy. This is just crazy. When I look at the woman whose place of business was shot at late in the evening, whose own yard was shot at as well, this woman today is terrified that this gentleman is out. This gentleman should be, even though it's allegedly, the fact that he's checking into the PD and the fact that he's receiving therapy all indicates that he did it. She right now is beside herself and is asking herself and other people, why isn't this person in jail until they go to court or until they go to trial? Mm-hmm. And so there was several businesses that were shot at, several people in the bail order that this individual cannot be within 50 feet of those businesses. Well, that's crazy. If he was shooting with a long gun, it doesn't take 50 feet. It takes miles for that person to be, with a restraining order to be away from those businesses. So this saga continues to go on.
But Councilor Kenny, isn't this a painful reminder of letting someone who is dangerous out on their own, of what happened with that estranged husband who killed his beautiful wife in that restaurant in Berlin. Wasn't that a statewide story where people were questioning why was this guy out? He had assaulted her, threatened her, hit her, assaulted her in every which way. He had threatened her over time, and he was let out, and he killed her. I mean, why didn't they learn? Didn't they learn then? Where the people of Berlin didn't really like this kind of like, if someone's dangerous, keep him confined until the justice has its way.
Well, even in the bail order, Jack, it says reckless contact with a deadly weapon. Doesn't the judge understand what that means?
Especially after what happened in that case. What was the name of the woman who was killed?
It was Marisol Fuentes murder-suicide case.
The guy killed her and then himself.
Michael Gleason. And that was that terrorized the public up. And it still does. And that case is still being reviewed, through the Domestic Violence Fatality Committee. But the point is that this guy is not only harmful potentially to the public, he's harmful to himself. Why would they let him out? And the thing that I look at too is, all his weapons were taken away from his home. But with Michael Gleason, the same thing happened in that case. His weapons were taken away, and then he ended up borrowing a weapon from a friend, and then he ended up killing his wife. We have to protect the public. So John McCormick, the county attorney general, has asked for reconsideration of the bail outcome, and asking that he be put in jail until he goes to court or goes to trial.
Well, I imagine the Berlin,
and that's the appropriate.
I imagine the Berlin police.
At this point.
I imagine the police aren't too happy this guy's out.
No, of course they're not, Jack. And the thing is that the order, to me, it's got so many holes in it, and it has an outcome is not what the public wants. We have to be hard on this with the governor moving forward with the bail reform, making sure that judges make decisions to keep alleged criminals in jail while they await court or trial. That's what the governor wants. And this judge is going against what the governor and what the legislature wants. We want to lock up the bad guys or the allegedly bad guys until they go to court or to trial.
Is there any other recourse here to get the judge's attention to reconsider this, or is the best way through the county attorney or the,
Well, I've already spoken to the administrative court judge at the circuit court, Ellen Christo. She can't speak to the case, but she's hearing me loud and clear. I've spoken to my colleague, John Stevens, who's on board with me. The local legislators up north are on board with me. We have to put some light on this case. We don't want anybody to be harmed again. And we need judges who are going to be tough on the law, who's going to keep, an individual in jail if they present a threat to public safety. And we need to be hardliners on that. The good news is that we have more people in our county correction systems awaiting trial because of the new bail reform law. That's the good thing. But this one slipped through the cracks. And I hope that the judge will see it, that he needs to be locked up. He can still receive therapy while he's in jail.
Right. But as you pointed out, he may also not be a threat to himself if he's under supervised custody in jail. Thank you. So, Councilor Kenny, I can tell you're fired up. Thank you for raising it to my and our attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Appreciate it.
Please keep us posted. Thank you.
I will. Thank you, Jack.
All right, take a break. We'll come back. Dean Spiliotis, one of our political experts and all-stars, Southern Hampshire University political science professor, talking about the latest from the Strait of Hormuz. And apparently Israel knows where 1,000 pounds of Iranian uranium is, Iran's uranium stockpile. Why don't we or Israel go secure it? But we're going to come back because there is a sense now that this thing, the whole situation between the U.S. and Iran right now is, if it's not going sideways, it seems to be stalled coming out of the weekends with no agreement after the talks in Pakistan. And now a blockade. Will that achieve some goals in terms of trying to get an agreement? And how long can this go on before public opinion turns even more at home and eventually Congress will get involved as the clock ticks? And what about gas prices at the pump, oil prices, indirectly food prices, energy prices? Hey, Alexa, hey, Google, worldwide. Play the Pulse of an H. Jack Heath, J-Dog on the boards. Back with Dean in a moment.
The Fed Point make 12Pulse of New Hampshire.
All right, we are back. And, as we bring in our next academic guest, I just want to remind folks or myself, a bell was going off in my head. And I do remember it was, I think it was Pope Francis. And I think it was when the president was first in 2016, that long ago, 10 years ago, was talking about, building the wall on the southwestern border with Mexico. And I think Pope Francis said something like, a person who builds walls rather than bridges is not a Christian. And of course, that got the response from then Donald Trump, President Trump, then saying the Pope's religious qualifications he questions and said it was disgraceful for a religious leader to question another person's faith. And now President Trump and Pope Leo over the war in Iran. And that's just one ancillary part of this. Of course, a blockade at the Strait of Hormuz about less than an hour from now. And is this thing flailing? Who knows after a weekend of trying to get an agreement? Dean Spiliota, Southern New Hampshire University, one of our other great sponsors. Dean, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Jack.
Well, what's your sense? Because I don't really have a great one this morning, and I mean that sincerely. I try and read between the tea leaves, but between the lines here and foreign policy, I begin to think, could the blockade hurt Iran enough financially? Is that about it? Controlling the strait is all they got. And oil, is it all about oil? Does it get China to flex more against Tehran? I'm trying to figure this out, but
Yeah.
I don't want a prolonged war in the Middle East. I don't think a lot of people do.
Yeah. No, I think that's right for sure. It's hard to know. I'm interested to see what happens. I've heard a number of Middle East experts and retired generals and others who have been saying for some time now that the U.S. should try a blockade on the strait in response to Iran. So we'll see if that actually has the intended impact. My sense is from the reporting that there may be some opportunities still for negotiation, but the countervailing argument that I've also heard is that Iran's economy is sufficiently diversified at this point that this is likely to cause as much pain for other countries as it is for Iran itself, and that it's just that the remnants of the regime are even more dug in and hard line than in the past. And so, we'll see what happens. This could last a few days. It could last longer. But I think, I heard President Trump say that he doesn't think it will hurt the United States because we have lots of oil, et cetera, et cetera. But, we all know the oil markets are global. This is causing tremendous hardship for a number of our Asian allies. It's likely to impact jet fuel in Europe shortages. So I was just listening to an economist who was saying that, even if this ends quickly, at this point, the kind of medium-term damage to the economy is kind of baked in.
Yeah, I've been hearing that softly. We had Stephen Junot on. We're going to have Doug Tengden on in a little bit. Both economists, Stephen with one of our great sponsors, Bank of America. And we were talking about this resiliency of this economy. And even this morning, Doug Tengden will be coming up. He said, if you look at the markets, they're off a little bit, but they're acting orderly. In other words, not going nuts. But I do think, it's funny, Dean. I just go with anecdotal stuff here at home. This weekend was, it's getting nicer out, warmer temperatures. So I don't know if you were out and about, but, out and about during the day, whether it was on walks or driving around or visiting kids. And there's a lot of real estate open houses right now, as you know. And this weekend, there was a ton, just about in every community. You'd see big signs for an open house and balloons. And I always say this, Dean. I always say you could always look to the economy, not only at gas prices at the pump, but real estate, because people's homes are really a big part of their net worth. And Dean, it was packed. Places where, there's not a lot of inventory. It's been a real long winter, so it's fun to go look. But I was just on a long workout, and I went by one home in Dover, actually two in the area, but one was reasonably priced, nice home, nice family home. Dean, it was like they were having a reunion party at the house. There were so many cars, people on the lawn looking at the gutters. I mean, it wasn't like a couple people. The realtor must have been thrilled. I bet you they got 2 offers or more. It had to be 20 people combing the house. So then I talked to some friends in Bedford. They said the same thing. So I don't think this is good for the economy at all. How can it be? But, the shorter it goes, the better. What concerned me was this weekend, the president was speaking to one of the national business reporters, and she, asked him, Mr. President, could we be dealing with $4 a gallon of gas towards the midterms? He said we could be.
Yeah, I saw that was Maria Bartiromo.
But, Dean, you tell me what's going to happen in the midterms if that's the case.
Yeah, I think it's problematic. The administration is saying that President Trump is going to Arizona and Nevada later this week to tout some of the tax breaks, like no tax on tips in the big, beautiful bill, and kind of to set the agenda for the affordability argument. But we know how sometimes these stump speeches go with President Trump. He has so much other stuff on his mind. It's going to be interesting to see if he can stay focused on the economic message. And you're right, there are kind of mixed signals. The market continues to be resilient. I was talking to I'm not looking for a house, but I just happened to be talking to a realtor I know a few weeks ago, and he was saying there's kind of a pent up demand after a rough fall and winter, and mortgage rates are not great, but they may be a little better. So, and there's a little bit more inventory this spring. But I think the longer term costs are, everything else, food, gas, et cetera.
Let me play devil's advocate though, Dean, and this is the problem. Sure. Last week there were signs that inflation is ticking up again. And when the president ran this time and won on the economy, he has railed constantly against the Biden administration for record high inflation. And he was right to do so. It was crazy how high it got. It was crazy. And that was largely fueled from unmitigated pouring federal stimulus money into the economy. It was like throwing gas on a couple of wooden sticks and newspapers to start a fire. But he also, within the first, I don't know how many minutes of his inaugural address, he started talking about gas prices and oil. Drill, baby, drill, liquid gold. We're going to see the lowest prices for gas people have seen in their modern lifetime. He talked a lot about gas prices. And now I understand it's because of global setting of oil and the Strait of Hormuz and uncertainties. I'm not saying it's not worth to stop a nuclear bomb in Iran either. But what I am saying is it's going to get old. If people this summer are fighting the cost of living, their financial, personal, their personal finances, everything's expensive. And if they're going to fill up their gas, their lawnmower, their car, their truck, or their RV, and it's $4.12 a gallon, they're not going to be happy, even if you say things are worth it in the Middle East.
Yeah, it's funny. President Trump did mention this weekend that, as I said, he believes that we won't have any oil shortages here because of, he mentioned drill, baby, drill. But, it's not just the price of gas. I hear anecdotally from extended family and friends complaints about airfares. They were kind of looking at airfares a little while ago, and now they went back to book for the summer, and stuff is going way up in cost. And they're talking about, jet fuel shortages and all that kind of stuff. If that stuff starts to sink into the collective psyche by the summer, that's going to be a real problem. And it's just, it's not just gas, it's eating out, it's booking hotels.
I get news for you. A lot of people did not realize. I have a moment if you have extra time. Dean Spilio, Southern New Hampshire University political science professor. I was talking to a neighbor down the way, and I like her. She's a hot ticket. She's very direct. And she said, you do your show, you know a lot more than me. Have we gone through our oil reserves here in America? And I said, well, we've used them, we've tapped them, but forget that question for a moment. Do you know how many barrels of oil the U.S. economy consumes in a day or a week? And she had no idea, and I told her some numbers. I asked her, do you know how much China consumes in a day or a week or a month? And it is mind-boggling. If people do not think this economy in the world, the global economy, still is not an oil-driven economy, they don't know much about reality of these countries that use a lot, whether it's India, whether it's China, whether it's Russia, whether it's the United States. We consume more than China's running second place to us right now, but I think it was like 7.3 billion barrels a year, and 16 to 20 million barrels. It's either a week or a day. I think it's a day. So my point is, we are very much an oil gas world still, whether you like it or not. It's the reality of. But oil and gas, natural gas makes electricity, and you talk about food production. Data centers are now sucking up more energy. Energy is a big part of our economy, and high oil and gas prices do affect so many other things you don't even think of. The production of goods, the transportation of a truck, transporting things to Target or Home Depot, electricity prices, just you to drive around in your vehicle. RV, people in the summer, they want to get in their RV and travel, right? They want to go away. Well, an RV sucks up a lot of energy. So I got to tell you, this energy thing, you can't, that's the other thing, you can't hide high gas prices and energy prices from consumers. They see it every week. They drive, someone else pointed this out to me. When you're driving just, on a, not even a highway, but like a Route 4 going through Northwood, or 101, and if you get off and you drive through Raymond, what do you drive by? You drive by gas stations. Could be Irving, could be Mobile, could be any one of these Cumberland farms. You drive by, and right up there, you see the price of gas on these signs. You see it every day, and you're reminded of this.
Yeah, when I saw this, we did a couple of interviews with farmers out in Iowa in the Midwest, and they were saying that they're spending thousands more on diesel fuel for their tractors and combines and
Mhm.
fertilizer and all of that. And so that's another concern in terms of the blockade is, you mentioned Asia. Those countries have already had to adapt to the shortages. They're changing their work weeks. They're having people work from home rather than commute into
Right.
the urban
Right.
areas.
Right.
At some point, China could say, if you don't let us have our oil, we're not going to let you have the kinds of things that you need from us, rare earth minerals, et cetera, for your high tech industry. So I think, again, I think we're all kind of in a wait and see mode because this could be over quickly or it could drag on.
Well, I hope long before Memorial Day, it's in the most of it's
For
in the rearview mirror. Thank you, Dean.
Sure thing, Jack. Thanks.
A lot to talk about, but the window and the clock ticking. We'll have much more today as this blockade takes part. Maybe it's effective. Maybe in a couple days or a few days they feel the pain, and we can get control and stop the uranium enrichment and get the heck out of there for the most part. Let's start lowering prices here at home. Some commentary, 603-228-2080. We come back 1 month from today, May 13th, we go 12 hours for our veterans. My 12th annual Make 12 Hours Count for our veterans. Vets Count, vetscount.org, vetscount.org, part of Easter Seals. 1 month from today. Please mark it in your calendar. Back on the Pulse of an H in a moment.
107.7 of New Hampshire.
All right. Our big U.S. Navy vessels versus little Iranian speedboats. We'll see how this goes. A lot of them. Hey, welcome back. There's a lot going on this Monday morning. But hey, let's start with some fun stuff. Ice out declared on the big lake, Lake Winnipesaukee, officially ice out. Mild temperatures today and through the weeks. We're on the warmer side this week, so enjoy that. Hey, Alexa, hey, Google, worldwide, play the Pulse of NH. Our poll question up on X at the Pulse of NH this morning has to do, it's not the first time President Trump has sparred with a pontiff, a pope, Pope Francis in 2016 over the wall between the United States and Mexico. They had a dust up. Now the president criticizing Pope Leo for his comments on the war between the U.S. and Iran, and the Pope responding back. Our poll question simply: do you think President Trump is right to criticize or be critical of the Pope? Yes or no? We're just measuring that. I'm not going to weigh in too heavily. Lot going on. You know, it's going to be very interesting if we can achieve the objectives we really need to achieve with Iran and in Iran, or the Strait of Hormuz, or 1,000 pounds of enriched uranium without boots in the ground. That's going to be an interesting equation. Our military expert who's been local and live with us, he's been phenomenal. I didn't schedule him today, but probably will tomorrow. But retired fighter pilot Tim Hafner of Durham, he said a number of weeks ago when I asked him, can we win this thing against the powers in Iran without boots in the ground? He said, well, as a fighter pilot, I've never seen a war really won without boots in the ground. But so we'll see. But I part of me, because I am like you, concerned, as we all should be, paying attention. This is real. This is not a war game. This is real. And it's the global pictures we've seen now, the Strait of Hormuz. And the Middle East is always a hotspot. And let me be very clear. Taking out the Islamic State as much as you can, and the supreme leaders and their terrorist organization, their number one goal is to obliterate Israel and the United States and the West and our Western way of life. That's their goal. That's their stated goal. I don't know if you knew that. Stated goal of Hamas. And they finance and have in the past Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, and all the attacks, the IEDs, all the terrorist stuff around the world. So it's not my chagrin or my regret here. And I don't want to see, because I know who has the largest nuclear arsenal in the Middle East, and a lot of people get that quiz question wrong. It's Israel. And I don't want to see a nuclear war over there. And had the Ayatollah and the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, if they had gotten capability of any nuclear bomb or missile or even tipped drone, I think it's pretty clear the way they've been firing around missiles at Arabic neighbors that they'd use it. I mean, look at all the stuff they fired into Arabic countries out of Iran. So that's okay, but let's go get the uranium. But the Strait of Hormuz is showing a very convoluted, complex picture, and now we're trying a blockade. We've threatened and tried other things. And I get this feeling that President Trump, I may be wrong, and it doesn't matter now because Monday morning quarterbacking is the easiest thing to do, right? Everyone's got advice and thoughts after the fact. But I do think our NSA, CIA, Joint Chiefs of Staff, our military, and therefore the Trump war team, if you will, probably thought that this would be a quicker endeavor, that if we bombed them hard and heavy with Israel, they would fold, they would collapse as a regime, they would crawl away, and that hasn't happened. I guess in hindsight, why should we be surprised? They're terrorists. Why do you think a terrorist is going to be rational and fearful? The only thing they fear is more fear. The only thing they really understand is, a bomb coming through the roof of their palace or bedroom, and that's the Islamic State. And if you don't agree, well, I don't care. It's pretty clear what they are. The question is, what do we do now? And I think the president's in a box right now, somewhat. And I'm not saying that we can't get out of that box, but I think the clock is ticking in terms of things at home that do matter. Because, taking care of the uranium seems to be why we did this, but more focus and tension seem to be with the Strait of Hormuz, which is an incredibly strategic. It's ironic about the Strait of Hormuz is, let's just be honest. 6 months ago, very few people could even pronounce it, knew where it was, understood it. A lot of people still don't. It's a very strategic, complicated, if you look at a mariner's map, strait, and about 20% of a lot of the world's oil and goods go through there from all around the world. And they call it the oil artery, the oil highway, the oil lane of the world. But it's not just oil, it's fertilizer for foods and farmers. It's around the world. It's pharmaceuticals, it's computer chips, it's all kinds of stuff. This weekend, it struck me, Saturday driving through Portsmouth, one of the big tankers is down in on the Port Authority dock, and it was unloading right there near the Sheraton downtown. It looked almost looked like Bahamian sand, and the huge tanker on the dock, and these cranes are unloading this stuff. And it reminds you that right in Portsmouth, right in the Piscataqua River, right in the port, right in Portsmouth, we have huge tankers that bring all kinds of stuff in and out of that port. Mostly in, by the way. Well, we import more than we export there. But everything from Sprague Energy, natural gas, propane, sand, salt, a lot of stuff comes in right in Portsmouth. And it's a reminder, can you imagine hundreds of tankers, global, worldwide tankers being lined up to get through that precarious, now convoluted strait? And then you got the Iranian, these smaller little speedboats dumping mines into the water to make it hard to navigate through without one of these tankers. Imagine the depth they carry to go through to hit one of these mines, or a surface to air missile, and all these ports along the way that Iran controls. Even after we've, quote unquote, decimated and destroyed their Navy, wiped out all their military. And yet, last time I checked, just a week or so ago, they shot down a fighter jet, and there's still a threat in the Strait of Hormuz. And I think it's either, I may be wrong, I think we have the best military in the world, and they plan unlimited contingencies and planning. And I saw that as a civilian, the high honor attending the U.S. Army War College in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, the National Security Seminar, the NSS. As a civilian there, I saw and met these colonels and generals and space commanders and all this stuff and the planning they do. I mean, they're on to whether it's the Arctic Circle, they're planning stuff that is well beyond this right now. But they plan a lot. And the way it works at the White House is when the president, whether it was former President Obama, green lighting going to get bin Laden in Pakistan, they present you with all these plans, all these scenarios. Here's what we do. Here's how we do it. Here's what can go wrong. And your team has to make a decision. There's no perfect plan. And as our guest the other day, our fighter pilot from New Hampshire, Tim Hafner, said, the enemy does have a vote, and they have a veto vote. The enemy, as much as you don't want the Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard or what's left, as long as you don't want them to have a vote, as you saw this weekend, no agreement, they still have a vote, and they can still do exactly what you don't want them to do. And I think we underestimated how fragmented even 8-9%, we can take out, as Tim Hafner, our military expert, retired fighter pilot, has told us several times, you can bomb and take out 92% of your enemy's capabilities, 92% or 90%. But if they have 10%, and they're driving around in small vehicles with surface-to-air missiles and AK-47s or gunboats, 10% of what's left can still do a lot of damage to a big tanker. And I don't know how many of you remember the Tom Hanks, Captain Phillips movie of the Somali pirates taking that huge tanker with a couple of basically what I'd call Zodiac gunboats, just, Somali pirates armed with an AK-47, this huge, I don't know if it's 650 feet, this huge tanker, boarding it and taking control. Because on board, at least in that one, I think it was I don't know if it was the Alabama, the whatever, Maersk, or whatever that tanker was in the movie, they made it, and the SEALs went and got the captain. And when you look at that movie, there was really no armed contingent aboard that tanker to fire back to protect itself. So these tankers are kind of sitting ducks, and they're commercial. They're world commercial tankers, and their insurance carriers and owners are not going to put them through that Strait of Hormuz if they're going to hit a mine or be shot at. So the Strait of Hormuz ends up being the most calculated or maybe complicated piece of this matrix or puzzle that I wonder if our NSA, CIA Joint Chiefs fully calculated how messy this could become. But right now, I, for one, feel that you have to end this sooner than later. And I would think I keep saying the next few weeks, but it's not me, by the way. Those are the words of the president. He kept saying, next 2 weeks, next few weeks, about a month ago, 2 more weeks, we should be in the backside of this thing. 2 more weeks. Said a week, 2 weeks ago, Thursday, about 2 weeks, when he was putting the deadline down of 8 p.m. whenever it was, or we'll bomb all the utilities and bridges. 2 weeks. We should be done with this 2 weeks. So I'm not the one saying 2 weeks. The president has been. Well, guess what? It better be 2 or 3 weeks, because if this thing goes into midsummer, it's going to pull down the U.S. economy, speaking of mines and tankers, like a big anchor around your ankle. Hey, Alexa, Google, play the Pulse of Nature. Come back and see if Doug Tengden agrees with any of that. World Market Advisors on the economy next.
This is the Pulse of Hampshire, live from the New England College Studios, home to a new media center where the next generation of journalists are taught to do it right. Now back to Jack Heath on the Pulse of New Hampshire.
Now, speaking of taxes, before I bring in Doug Tengden, World Market Advisors, talk about the global and therefore the economy here at home. I was having some fun at the state of Maine's expense at the end of last week in Governor Mills with their $500 million in supplemental budget, their $300 relief checks, which is probably a dinner in Kennebunkport, in their 2% millionaires tax. And what a fiscal mess that state is. What a giant sieve. But if you look at their overall tax burden, it's about as high as California. Does anyone living in the state of Maine paying taxes understand that? So don't criticize Gavin Newsom. If you're living in Portland, Maine, you get what you vote for. All right, Doug Tengden, World Market Advisors. I don't want to go down all the roads we've already discussed this morning. Blockades about to begin of the Strait of Hormuz. The markets may not be sort of, well, layman's terms, Doug, freaking out yet, but I'm still looking at the price of gas, the price of energy, but indirectly how that hurts and impacts so many things in a very tenuous situation. And I'm wondering how long this is going to go. I'm sure you are too. Good morning, Doug.
Good morning, Jack. Yeah, it's concerning, particularly with gas prices around here pushing $4 a gallon. Elsewhere in the state, they might be a little bit lower, a little bit higher. New Hampshire's lucky; it's about 20 cents cheaper here than anywhere else. But of course, that's going to hurt. That's going to hurt people in the short run. In the longer run, people adapt to higher prices. We did around COVID. We did earlier, and so $4 gas is not going to kill the economy. But in the short run, it certainly hurts, and it hurts people, particularly at the lower end.
But it will kill the economy if it goes 6 months.
Yeah, and it'll kill the economy if it goes to $5 or $6 a barrel. Certainly, that'll happen. I was looking at something over the weekend. There's an analyst who has what he calls the Walmart indicator, where he just takes the ratio of Walmart's stock price to the stock prices of a group of luxury companies. And that's really interesting because you think of it, if people are getting hurt, well, then they're not going to Las Vegas Sands or buying at Williams-Sonoma. Instead, they're buying their stuff at Walmart. And that really peaked during the financial crisis. It peaked during COVID, and it's peaking now. So that's interesting. It's not infallible. It has false positives, but it's just an indicator. I think this economy is fragile. It's not broken, but it's fragile.
I think it's on people's minds. And if something's on your mind, it's on your mind. If it's in the back of your mind. But yet I was talking with Dean Spiliotis, our political science expert earlier from Southern Hampshire University. And this weekend, Doug, I don't know about Hanover. Well, you know what? No one can afford to buy a home in Hanover except for you. But I was talking about people I know in Bedford, Southern Tier, Seacoast. There were so many real estate open houses Saturday and Sunday because it's time of year, warmer temps finally, pent up demand over the winter, low inventory. And Doug, on my trek, it used to be a jog, but I'd sort of call it a fast walk now. But, I was doing a good one, 5 miles on Saturday, beautiful day, I went by 3 open houses on the coast, 3.
Wow.
Doug, the cars looked like it was a family reunion. I mean, there were one home in Dover that is, I think, very well priced. In other words, I think they want to move it quickly. It's, in the low 600s, right near the water. I went by it twice on my way out, my way back, and I counted the cars, 8 to 10 cars each time. People walking the yards, looking at the gutters, looking at the fire pit, looking at the roof, looking at the shingles. They had about, they probably had 50 people there on Saturday.
Yeah, and 2 words, Jack: sweat equity. The way to buy a house when prices are crazy is you got to look off the map. This house was unoccupied for 6 years before I moved in, so I had to evict some of the residents. It has always been the case that you got to put in sweat to get that first that first stake in terms of real estate. But real estate prices have certainly been inflated because of COVID, because of everything that happened with COVID. And
please stop mentioning
down.
You got to stop mentioning COVID. It triggers my PTSD. No. The other thing I wanted to mention this weekend, 2 younger couples, I would define as, give me a minute, mid to upper 30s, 2 sets of couples I talked to this weekend. I asked them what they're thinking of, looking, see what else they're getting. Usually it's more space because if they got a dog or two and they've been blessed with a kid or two, all of a sudden they're a family and they want more room, right?
Right.
And I asked them this question: what is your current fixed mortgage rate? And that goes back a number of years. Guess what they tell me? One of them said 3.2 and the other one said 2.9.
Right.
And I said,
Right.
do you understand that whatever you do, if you borrow money, it's going to be more than double and you'll never see those interest rates as long as you live. I hope you understand that. And they go, yeah. I go, no, you got to understand the first house we bought was 14% fixed interest rate. The average is probably about, where it is right now, but you're not going to see 2.9% ever again. So think long and hard before you give up that house. Maybe you can do an addition, but you're not going to see 2.9%.
That's correct as far as it goes. I've been in this business a long time, Jack. I never say never.
No, I know, but Doug, look at how easy. I mean, you go to borrow $500,000 because you're putting 20 or 30% down. Just do the math. It's easy. Call it 3%. Right. Call it 3%.
Right.
You're under $2,000 a month for that payment with taxes included. Maybe $2,000. You do it now at 6%, and do the numbers. You're going to be in the mid threes. It's unbelievable the difference.
That's correct. And when you add in the cost of commuting having doubled, the cost of the cost of gas going up, the cost of everyday goods going up, people are definitely feeling the squeeze. I mean, they call it an affordability crisis. I think it's an income crisis. I think
it's both now, because everything, you need to make more. Doug, we're going to probably catch you a few times this week with the volatility. Doug Tengden, World Market Advisors. Thank you, Doug.
Jack, you have a great week.
All right. We'll come back. Anna Brown's going to tell us what's going on locally. Citizens Count.